Looking for an adoption of the agenda. Councillor Nielsen, any additions or deletions?
Please, sir.
Go ahead.
I have two topics to be added to the agenda, please. The first one is Central Alberta Homeless Data Collection.
Give me 1 second. 15.2. Okay.
And the second topic is the Community Safety Plan. Thank you.
15.3. Anything else? Councillor Billingsley?
Yes, I'd like to add additional security service to assist with law enforcement.
$15.4. Anything further? Okay, so 15.2 Central Alberta Homeless Data Collection. Those in favor of adding that to the agenda? Added. 15.3 Community Safety Plan. Those in favor? Added. And 15.4 Additional Security Service. Those in favor? Also added. Thank you. Looking for an approval of the agenda as amended. Councillor Nielsen.
So moved.
Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 4, approval of the minutes. Any errors or omissions? Go ahead, Councillor Aberley.
No. My mistake.
4. You don't want to move them. You don't want to move. You don't want to move the minutes?
Oh no, I thought somebody else had. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Moved by Councillor Aberley. Any errors or omissions? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 6, consent agenda. Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to pull item 6.1 from the consent agenda just for discussion, please.
6.1 will become.
Road assessment report.
Yep, we'll go into committee of the whole, 9.6. Okay, looking for a motion to approve the rest.
So moved.
Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 8, delegations. We've got Carly Dolan.
I'm just here for budget.
Oh, okay, I had you here as a delegation.
Well, they told me to fill it out. So.
Oh, okay, we'll move on to Kayla comment. Good morning.
Good morning. So I submitted a presentation for funding requests for Citizens on Patrol. So I guess I can kind of go through that. So it's building safer communities by mobilizing citizens throughout Alberta to participate in community-based crime prevention initiative in cooperation with local law enforcement agencies. The benefits of a COP program is that it's a citizen-run program, community involvement, extra eyes and ears for RCMP and bylaw, structured reporting procedures ensure proper evidence is submitted in a timely manner. Additional presence in the community could deter crime, utilizes experience of community members to reduce crime. Some of the members have security sector or related experience. Supports crime reporting and utilizing additional resources. So the different types of COP programs that are offered are vehicle, bike, and foot patrols, speed watch, crime prevention checks, and special events. Required patrol equipment. So Each patrol vehicle is required to have one patrol pack per pair on shift. And it's to be picked up and dropped off at the beginning and end of shifts, which allows for alternating use of equipment. We're seeking equipment to supply a maximum of 4 packs per patrol period. I do have a list of things that are there that would be required for the packs, as well as any additional costs. And then on the next page, just adds a little bit of an estimated total. We did hand out donation request letters to the community. From my understanding, the community is stretched a little bit thin in terms of donations because everything's starting up with school again. So there's a lot of people are doing fundraising currently. And then I guess as well, we were referred to the community grant program from the city. However, our registration is not completed as of yet. So we had submitted everything on August the 4th. And a follow-up on August 18th that they are working on May 16th paperwork. But will contact us when they're working on August documents. If anyone has questions.
Go ahead, Councillor Nielsen.
I move the City Council accepts the presentation by Wetaskiwin Citizens on Patrol Association as information. I have some
Moved by
questions.
Councillor Nielsen. Go ahead, Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Through the chair to Kayla. To get started, you're looking at about $4,300. So how many volunteers are you going to require to take on this project, and how many do you have now?
Currently, we have probably 10 people that are signed up. I am working on doing an information session because it was supposed to be mentioned at the town hall in a little bit more depth, but there was a lot going on at that. So I do have probably 30 people that are interested in attending information session, or I guess there might be more.
And in your talk about your startup costs at $4,300, you have an additional cost. Have you drawn up a budget what the ongoing costs are going to be out throughout the year? And have you thought about how that funding model will work?
There shouldn't be too much for maintenance-wise, other than like monthly data costs for the iPads. And the reason that it's required to be iPad is because the Patrol app only runs on Apple. So that means that anybody that has Androids are not able to use their phone because it's not compatible with it.
Thank you. And also, I just wanted to say thank you for your hard work on this.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Kayla. Kayla, thank you for organizing this. My question, Citizens on Patrol are supposed to be the eyes and ears for the enforcement establishment. Many, many years ago, I was on Citizens on Patrol. We donated our gas. We paid for the gas ourselves. And as eyes and ears, we were told not to get out of the vehicle, that all we had to do was, if we saw something, then we phoned the RCMP. So I'm wondering why all of this equipment is required if you are just the eyes and ears and all you need to do is phone the RCMP if you see something happening in our community.
So like the dash cams and SD cards, obviously that would be important for capturing footage or evidence. of anything that's going on. First aid kits, in terms of if somebody is injured, obviously we're not just going to leave somebody that's injured. Traffic wands, so we also do speed watch programs and things like that, or if there is anything in the evening, then traffic wands can be utilized that way. And the safety vests are just a part of the equipment to be able to identify. So it will have citizens on patrol on it.
So you're saying that there's going to be some training involved? There has to be training involved if you're going to use wands and control speed and things. Is that included in your budget?
So the training is done by us as well as RCMP.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Had a couple questions.
Mike? Talk to you, Mike.
Sorry, talk to Mike. Liability. So you say $200 for insurance. What is that covering? 'Cause if you're using the city of Wetaskiwin and we're subsidizing you, basically, is there any way that it can come back to the city of Wetaskiwin? As a liability, if something goes wrong, because you're getting grants, it's almost like you're an employee. Could be wrong, I could be corrected, but what is there any liability to come back to the city?
From my knowledge, the insurance does cover the liability of the program, and then as well, any members are supposed to be reporting to their vehicle insurance as well that they're using it for additional patrols, so that should also cover liability.
Because $200 seems pretty cheap for insurance to cover all these vehicles. And my other question is,
Sorry to interrupt, it's actually through ACOPA, so they require everyone to be insured under their insurance, so I'm not sure if they have a group insurance or something like that for liability-wise.
so these vehicles being used, you don't know if they're going to be approved by their insurance or not, because if you're using your vehicle for,
No, it's a society insurance.
okay,
For the group itself. You mandatory have to be insured.
so any repairs or if there's an incident, damages to these vehicles, their insurance would cover, but the repairs, is that the burden of the owner of the vehicle?
I believe that would be why we're supposed to notify our vehicle insurance separately to let them know that we will be using it for patrolling. So
Yeah, I
it
understand that if there's damages during the insurance, but the repair, not in an accident, but the average daily repair or fuel to these vehicles are a burden to the owner of the vehicle, not to the insurance.
Do you have insurance that covers your fuel?
No, but if I use my vehicle for business purposes,
It's
I'm
not
not-
business purposes. This is a volunteer organization.
Unless we were to get donations of gas cards or anything like that.
thank you.
Anything further? Councilor Nielsen?
Thank you. Through the chair. To Kayla. Can you give me sort of the idea about your relationship, Citizens on Patrol, with RCMP and bylaw? And what I'm really trying to get at is, do they direct where you spend your time and attention, or do you just meander through this city while on patrol?
So from my conversations with them, they would let us know different hotspots that are around town, or if there's areas that they specifically would like patrolled. And then if we have, I guess, additional people that are on shift, then they can patrol other areas of town as well.
Okay. And is there oversight? So as you launch this project, is there oversight by a provincial or national body that assists with training or anything of that nature? Or are you a separate entity and to yourself?
So we do have to follow ACOPA guidelines for everything. So they do have their own training system. They are always available to answer any questions that we might have in regards to things.
Okay. And my last question, Kayla, would be, when would you be hoping to launch this project and actually have boots on the ground, so to speak?
As soon as our paperwork comes through.
Thank you.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to Kayla, I too would like to thank you. I'm going to start with that. And I have a couple questions, but the first is, we joke around here about acronyms. What is ACOPA?
So it's the Alberta Citizens on Patrol Association.
Thank you. And that is a provincial body under which you would be responsible to?
Yes, and then they are under Canada.
Under a federal one, thank you. We were speaking last week, we had Coffee with the Mounties. There was a Coffee with the Mounties project, and you were there, and we got talking about vigilantes. Can you, because it was my understanding that that is why programs like this did not happen or were not successful, and is why it didn't, one of the reasons it wasn't successful. Can you speak to that, so we're not opening ourselves to that?
So everyone is required to do security clearances, as well as meet with our liaison. So in terms of that, we have our own guidelines and things like that that people are required to follow, where they're able to be immediately excused if they're violated.
Thank you. And then my last question is, if you could just speak a little bit as to whether or not there are other activities that the group would do. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, let's say Karen is not comfortable being one of these people on a foot patrol or a car patrol. That is not something that I can see me doing. And one of the things I like about this project is that it allows all of us to take back some of our fear, if we do or don't have it, and we'll take back some of our power. But if I'm not comfortable on the streets, are there other things that are part of the project that we could, as a larger community, do to help citizens on patrol?
I mean, we would be able to do special events. So in the case of doing anything like that, we would be more than happy to have volunteers to help us with that, as well as possibly speed watch or crime prevention checks. So those we could receive assistance from volunteers for.
Thank you.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Kayla, once again, thank you so much for putting so much time and effort into this. My question is more or less because I noticed that in the packs that you guys are going to be having, there's first aid kits and gloves. And I was curious what type of medical attention you guys would be trained for, or if it's mandatory for everybody to take CPR, or because I'm just kind of confused about what those would be used for and what volunteers would be doing with it. So yeah, I was just wondering if you have any answers for those.
So the list was originally given to me from one of the directors of ACOPA, so that's just a standardized list of what they typically have on them in the case of an emergency. I believe majority of our members so far probably have first aid. So they, for the most part, probably are certified in that. So I would be able to, I guess, make sure that We have at least one certified first aid person on shift.
Okay, and my second question is, for people that are on shifts, do they have to go in pairs, or is it that you just each individually go out?
Yeah, they do have to go in pairs, so it's for safety reasons as well as reporting. You always have a witness. So, yeah, in terms of that, we wouldn't allow anyone to go out on their own. And then I don't think we would be doing too much of like bike and foot patrols as of right now due to the risk of and some of the violence and stuff like that. So I think moving forward, we'll probably have like a color code system in terms of like how things have been in the community, if it would be considered safe to go out and do more in-depth patrols other than vehicle.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Councilor Bronco.
Chair, through administration, is there any liability to the city of Wetaskiwin regarding this? Can something goes wrong, can we be accused, or because if we donate money to it, are we in any way or shape tied to this in a liability?
Through the chair to Councilor Bronco. The city has coverage in our insurance policy for volunteers, so we would be covered through there. Having said that, the city gets named in every lawsuit that happens, primarily within the city, so it depends on the situation, but it would be protected under our insurance as well.
Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. Councillor Aberley said something about the previous one being unsuccessful. The previous Citizens on Patrol was quite successful, and the thing was we just ran out of volunteers. But while it was operating and the number of people we had, it was an assistance that the RCMP and our peace officers did appreciate. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. First off, sorry, that was then my misunderstanding at the meeting, so thank you for that. Just one last question, Kayla, and it just popped into my head. You were asked when you think that it would be able to get started, and you said not until the paperwork comes through. Is that the May Societies Act paperwork?
Yeah, so we're waiting for our society paperwork to come through. And when I was talking with them, it was submitted August 4th. I followed up August 18th, and they were working on May.
Yeah, that's standard. Okay. Thank you very much.
Anything further? If council were to donate $4,300 or up to $6,000 based on the additional costs, what work would the city have to do or administration have to do with the Citizens on Patrol to make that happen?
Through the chair to council, we just need a motion of council to send them money. It would likely be through the existing grant and aid budget for 2023. And then again, as Kayla noted, once they have their nonprofit society, then we could run it through the regular program.
Would we wait until they got their nonprofit, or would we, is that your hope, is that once you become a nonprofit you would start this up, or is it when you get the funding you would start this up?
Ideally, I would like to try and get the funding so I can get other stuff going while we're waiting for it to come through. And then we're able to start up our training, do the information sessions, and just start, I guess, kind of being present in the community to build it up.
And they would be responsible for the same reporting that the other community grant program would be as well?
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a comment, I guess, is I think it would be appropriate. I put an item on the agenda for later on, a community safety plan, and I want to make sure that we don't piece it together a little bit here and a little bit there and not really understand the full impact of what we're trying to accomplish. And with no disrespect to what's going on here, and I see this potentially being an important part of a community action plan, I'd like to have the discussion that would include Citizens on Patrol as part of a community action plan, and really address what potential costs there are in its entirety moving forward, as opposed to bit by bit.
Thank you. Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Kayla. Item 9, Committee of the Whole, staff reports for information. Welcome, Chief.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. So I'm here to present our firefighter pilot project report. Wetaskiwin Fire Service has experienced an increased need for responders due to an increasing and unsustainable growing call volume. The department's current staffing model is highly dependent on paid-on-call members. However, the department has observed a decrease in the ability of the paid-on-call members to respond during the peak times during the workday as a result of commitments to their employers and the ability to return to the community during the day. Lisa, can you pull up there's some charts. So the average number of paid-on-call staff for this reporting time, January 2022 and August 2023, was 30 to 35 paid-on-call members. Since then, our roster has decreased. In January of 2023, Wetaskiwin Fire Services initiated a full-time firefighter pilot project in response to this challenge. The pilot project started on January 4th of 2023, and it will conclude on December 31st of 2023. The project was funded from within the approved 2023 budget with a carryover funding available from 2022. So administration, we've identified the following metrics to assess the effectiveness and overall outcome of this pilot project. These metrics are calls for service, average daytime response, and shoot times. Calls for service.
Chief, council has it on their screens
Okay,
if you want to keep
okay.
going.
Thank you. So calls for service as seen in Table 1, they've increased over the last 5 years, with the trend continuing upwards. To reverse this trend, administration has implemented a false alarm bylaw as well as changed the response protocols for medical calls to help mitigate the increase in calls as was previously presented to council. Those types of calls have decreased. However, other emergency responses have increased, such as motor vehicle collisions, mutual aids, medical emergencies, and rescues. Wetaskiwin Fire Service is continually monitoring, excuse me, and looking for ways to reduce these call volumes. This metric reinforces the need for a staffing model that can respond to an increasing community demand. The average daytime responses, as seen in Table 2, shows the ratio of responders during our peak call times, which are Monday to Friday. The pilot project term positions were put into place to cover these times to ensure that we had the responders for these responses during the week, 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. We had adjusted the schedule for Thursday for the full-time pilot project so that they could attend the training in the evening with the paid-on-call staff members. The chart shows that the responses were actioned by the full-time staff, with only one paid-on-call staff member responding on average for these calls. The responders we used to have during the day are now employed elsewhere full-time, and those that used to be able to leave work to respond have been limited to responding consistently since COVID. Thursday shifts, as I had mentioned, were adjusted to allow the full-time staff to still attend training nights with the paid-on-call staff. The training program has been adjusted and enhanced by the full-time staff to ensure consistency and competency, so it was important to adjust their their shift to allow them to train with the paid on-call staff. It also allows for working relationships and camaraderie. Having full-time staff ensures that there are resources, emergency response, and administrative support during the day, during the week. Shoot times, as is shown in Table 3, shows that crew 1 to 4, which are the paid on-call crews, and crew 5 is the full-time staff. Having full-time staff has decreased the shoot times in most instances by 50%. And just to put the definition out there, shoot time is defined as the time from the minute the dispatch notification is received to the time the apparatus has left the station. This is significant as the crews get to the emergency sooner, allowing them to start mitigating the situation sooner. This is of great benefit to medical situations. Typically, early intervention helps in more successful outcomes. This holds true to rescue situations and fire suppression activities as well, in helping decrease property damage or loss by intervening and rectifying the situation earlier. These full-time positions, as trialed during this pilot project, have provided great benefit for the City of Wetaskiwin, along with the fire department itself. We've observed the following benefits as a direct result of the pilot project. So improved firefighter response. The primary reason for turning the term positions into permanent positions is to continue to move the department forward and to ensure emergency response during the day, during the week. In 2022, we were able to staff multiple units during the day because we had staff that were not employed full-time elsewhere, as I had mentioned earlier. So they were able to respond to the daytime calls. Since then, we don't have these staff available. So we're relying solely on the full-time crew for daytime response. Reduced response times. By having the full-time staff, we reduce our response times to the emergencies. The crew is in the station and ready to respond to the city's emergencies. Faster response times in improved service delivery to this community. Efficiencies and consistency for training. An internal review of the fire department identified inconsistencies in how the training program was delivered. The full-time staff have revamped the program, ensuring that the necessary skills and abilities to operate safely are being delivered in a consistent manner. They will continue to enhance, manage, and deliver the program, making it more appealing to those looking to join the fire service. Enhanced recruitment and community engagement. Hiring full-time members means a more attractive role to potential recruits. Being a firefighter is not just responding to calls, but it also involves community engagement and fire prevention activities such as parades, open houses, school tours, inspections, and interagency exercises. This pilot project is scheduled to end December 31st of 2023. There have been great benefits to having these staff members, and there are significant risks if we lose them once the project ends. Delayed and or low turnout of paid on-call employees during daytime work hours, increased workload for existing full-time employees, increased demand from Wetaskiwin businesses, continued staff burnout with low morale, continued attrition from paid on-call employees, reduction in level of service reduction in the level of service that the department can provide, misalignment with the city's quality management plan, RCMP, and possible legal ramifications due to the lack of responders and resources. The community needs the assurance and understanding that they will have a crew responding to their emergency in a safe and expedient manner. City employees need to be assured they work in a safe environment with the necessary resources available to mitigate emergent responses and have the capacity to do so. Administration has also submitted an operating business case to support a full-time firefighter staffing model moving forward as part of the 2024 budget.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Aberle.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. I move that City Council accepts the firefighter pilot program update dated September 25, 2023 as information.
Moved by Councillor Aberle. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to the chief. I'm just wondering, if there's a fire call, how many people usually would respond?
During the day, during the week?
Yes.
Currently, it's the 3 full-time staff members.
And
And we've had, on average, 1 paid on-call staff on standby.
And in the evening, how many people would, or on a weekend, how many people would respond?
Depends on the weekend, and it depends on the evening as well. Right now, we've got between 5 and 8.
So during the day, we can suppress fire with 3 people, but on weekends and evenings, we need 5 to 8 people? I'm just trying to get this in my
So
mind.
during the weekday, once the earlier response, they can go and size up the scene. If we need mutual aid, then that's when we would call mutual aid. Or if we have those that are on standby, then we can call them out. Myself or Deputy Chief Plant also can respond during the day, depending on the situational update. In the evening, we have more resources available.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Billingsley. Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to Chief Coleman. I find it interesting that our calls for service continue to go up. And I sort of have a two-part question. Is one, do you have a suspicion as to why that may be? Are there more fires, or is that just something I'm imagining? And B, do these paid on call, no, not the paid on call, excuse me, do the full-time firefighters, are they successful in helping with community engagement in that, and I'm thinking community safety in ways that we can better protect, say, our house or the wildfires that you've had to deal with, things like that?
Great
Clear?
questions. Through the chair to Councillor Aberley. So in emergency services, calls typically go on trends, and it can depend on anything. It can depend on time of year, it can depend on weather, it can depend on trends in the community. Crime rates go up, typically we get more emergency calls. It's right now, the data that we have collected from the City of Wetaskiwin Fire Department, there's not enough data to see what trend we're on. So to tell when it's going to go up, when it's going to go down, there's not really any hard evidence at this point. We are going through the master plan process right now. Our consultant is also looking through our calls, our stats, other areas, and looking for trends. So there's that piece of it. And sorry, what was the second question?
When I think to community safety being our second strategic direction, and that would include fire services, and do the full-time staff versus the paid on call, is there a greater opportunity for community engagement in how we can help protect ourselves from fires in general?
Sorry, at this point there is. So our full-time staff members have engaged in fire prevention activities as well. When they're not responding to the calls, they're still available to do the school tours, the open houses. Our fire prevention activities have also been greatly staffed by the full-time members, getting out into the community. This is how to do a fire safety plan. This is absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the Chief. Chief, I was just wondering, with the open mic earlier, does fire services get called to deal with overdoses?
Yes, we do.
And how many calls would that be? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is it significant, or?
I can't speak to that at this time. I'm sorry, I don't have the.
No, and I'm sorry, that's an unfair question to get the numbers, but you do respond to overdoses.
We do.
And so that's part of maybe why calls for service could be up?
It could be.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. My colleague had asked my question.
Go ahead, Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to Chief. Just previously, we were talking about recruitment program. So can you share with us what's happened? You've got a new crew that's been recruited and would be in training, and another batch in the incubator. How long from the time of recruitment to the amount of training they need before they are actually ready to go on call?
Another great question through the chair to Councillor Nielsen. So we just started 6 new recruits. They do have their pagers. Previous to me coming to the city, it was a year-long process, and they would get their pagers. We've changed the recruitment process to give them the necessary training within 1 to 1.5 months to be able to respond, to be able to be safe on a scene, It doesn't mean that they can do all the skills, but those 6 recruits that we had started are responding now. So we do have the support activities from them, and we just finished another recruitment, and I believe there's 8 potential new recruits. So when we finish the recruitment, we put the posting out, we accept applications, and then we go through the applications and the resumes and cover letters. We'll do the interviews and then a physical, and then our next recruit class that we start would be January 1st, and hopefully all 8 make it to that January 1st start date.
Great. And when they do that and you hand over the pager and all that, is there any kind of formal procedure or formal announcement that we've got all these new recruits?
Not at this time.
Okay.
It's something that we can work on.
And I think you've got great support within the community, and I think it would be beneficial to the community to know that we do have, in a time like Councillor Elliott was talking about, where volunteerism is sort of a dying breed, to let our community know that we do have new recruits standing up to serve their community. And I think that'd be a good endorsement of what's going on with the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Chair, through Fire Chief. Will council be able to get information on, let's say, the intoxication or the overdoses, how many times you went, or just information?
Through the chair to Councillor Branco, we can provide the stats on, we don't have all of them. A lot of them comes in as a mutual aid or a medical aid and that type of stuff. And then we go in and we mitigate the situation, or we just go and assist the ambulance, the medics, and a lot of times we don't get what the outcome or what, it's all speculation, right? We don't get the specifics. We go in and we do the assist, and then.
Thank you.
Anything further? Do you know what our calls to date are so far this year?
Almost 800.
Today, wow. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enforcement Services Operation Report 9.2. Welcome, sir.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Everybody can hear me? Because I also have a mic problem, so. This morning, I'm just going to give you guys a brief, high-level overview of our general operations over the last few years. So I have a slideshow there. Just make sure you guys can follow along there. Just let me know if you guys see it.
Yeah, we have it on our
We have it as well.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go with after the main title slide there, I'm going into the program and service delivery. So basically, this is just based on the service levels that Council approved in July 2023 for our current staffing levels. So again, just go over the brief overview of public safety and community well-being, promoting and enhancing traffic safety, our commercial vehicle program, assisting emergency services, requests for assistance from various community groups as well as multi-agency cooperation, property concerns and compliance, animal control operations, and then we do our community relationships and engagement, and then also have an automated traffic enforcement program. On to the next slide there will just be, again, overview of our current structure. So with enforcement services, we have 2 kind of branches. We have administration and operations. In our administration, we have the CPO sergeant, which is myself, and an admin watch clerk. Myself, basically, I'm strictly administrative, but currently I still do emergency response as required. I also do respond to requests for supervisor by the on-duty officers, as well as I do back up our officers as well if they require going to various calls. Our bylaw services, just want to make a note of that. As of a program change by the Alberta government, our bylaw enforcement officers are no longer sworn peace officers, so it's just our community peace officers now are sworn peace officers. We've had a vacant bylaw officer position since the start of the year. We have hired a term officer starting in the spring. that should hopefully be run training, but that runs until December 31st. And then currently, we actually are in the process of hiring that vacancy right now. On to the next slide for emergency concerns. So just kind of highlighting high level again what some of the concerns that we're looking in our department. One of them is staff burnout and mental health, and this is just related to high workloads. Delayed responses to community concerns and requests. Now we're stacking calls for officers. Increased complaints related to public behaviors and social disorder. Again, we're assisting other agencies based on concerns for their safety, as well as assisting RCMP for non-emergent calls. That forward is decrease in proactive patrols and enforcement, and then our ability to attract and retain competent staff, and that's based on our high workloads. So I'm just going to go over some general, this is now the general duty operations stats. So the first slide here, that's going to show our 7-year trend with the average increase, other than 2021 having a little bit of a spike. The average increase is 11% per year from 2016 all the way to 2022. On to the next slide. Our top 5 categories out of that is our municipal enforcement, so that's our community standards, property, land use, development, and then taxi ride for hire, our municipal bylaws. So that takes care of our 36% of our time. Animal control is another high one for us. It's 35% of officer time. Assist requests, again, that's from the public, RCMP, fire, and other outside agencies. That's 14%. Traffic, again, that's Traffic Bylaw and Traffic Safety Act. That takes care of 11% of our time. And then our other provincial statutes, which is our gaming and liquor, so our public in-talks, Environmental Protection Act, our illegal dumping, and other provincial statutes is 4%. And then we do have another, but it just not enough calls there to make a percentage there. Other note that we should make as well as in our categories is that files have become more complex in some of our property compliance, requiring the extended follow-ups, the requirement of maintaining and issuing court orders, so attending court for that, as well as having to involve multiple agencies to create task force to tackle some of these problems. That takes up a lot of our officer time as well for some of these more complex files. On to the next slide. So kind of talk about our proactive work. So then this is just our trend over the last 7 years, ranging from about 13%. That we did have a spike up to almost 23% of our files were self-generated. And that note, the reason we had a spike in 2021 is we actually had 2 additional bylasses for the summer. Up until December there, we had 2 extra bodies on the road as well. So it had us up to, I think, about 5. So on to the next one now. So it kind of, we talk about workload, so how do we quantify that? So basically, for here, I'm not going to go to all the numbers here, but just kind of shows you the trend that we're in the red. Those are our file loads in comparison to other agencies. I just kind of did the multi-year averages just to kind of report on it. So for the trend from 2016 to 2022 for Wetaskiwin, we had 956 files per officer. Stony Plain, there had 494 files per officer. Leduc, 376 files per officer. Edson, 764 files per officer. Spruce Grove, 452 files per officer. And then Fort Saskatchewan at 376 files per officer, kind of showing you the trend. That's for the urban. I also did kind of pull from the rural counties as well. So the next slide there, yeah, shows our kind of files, and then as well as I kind of included RCMP here. They were fortunate enough to give me some files here for comparison. So again, we're at 956. RCMP average is 332, and that's more their kind of criminal code investigative. They're not including the kind of minor files in there. Wetaskiwin County, our kind of counterparts next door, they're at 141 files per officer. Camrose County is 88 files per officer, and then Parkland County is at 237 files per officer. All right. So on the next slide, this is kind of warnings and tickets. So the reason I put this slide is in here, we don't generate a file for everything. So if it's not an investigative file, we don't generate it, we can issue a ticket. That ticket itself is, for us, is deemed a file because the ticket can have pictures, investigation to it, but we don't generate a file for it. So this kind of shows the trend of our warnings versus tickets over the years, as well as the number in red is our automated traffic enforcement. So that's how much percentage of the tickets we're issuing and taking up our time over the years. It's kind of getting, since 2018, it's getting kind of 4 to 4%. And then 2019, we had change in vendors. In 2020, we fired up again. It was 36% of our time spent on tickets. 2021 showed that we spent 77% of our time dealing with ATE tickets. And 2022 was 66% of our time. So that would just kind of give you an idea of that. So with that being said, I did also reach out to agencies just to see what their average is per officer for tickets issued. So again, for the urban side, Wetaskiwin, we're issuing 806 tickets per officer on that multi-year average. Stony Plain is 300 tickets per officer. Leduc was unable to provide any information. Edson, their average, it's now kind of climbing, but their average is 54 tickets per officer. Spruce Grove was 296 tickets per officer issued, and then Fort Saskatchewan was 317. And then the counties, they had a little bit higher because they were doing some more road infrastructure. So compared to us, again, 806, Wetaskiwin County was gave their information at 554 tickets per officer, and Parkland's at 293 tickets. So again, just showing some where our time is spent as well dealing with tickets for our general duties. So that kind of concludes our general duty stuff. Now I'm including automated traffic enforcement because we do operate that out of our general duties. We don't actually have a separate officer or min for this. So I kind of wanted to go over that. So some background on that. So this is just kind of to my knowledge because I haven't been in this role for very long, but since 2006, the City of Wetaskiwin has operated an automated traffic enforcement program. The original purpose for automated traffic is to enhance traffic safety within our community and reduce the severity of collisions. Since the implementation, the automated traffic guidelines have changed, most recently in 2019, and then they decided the government of Alberta changed it again in 2022. With the recent government changes and the regulations, it has a lot of municipalities reviewing their existing automated traffic enforcement programs. Some additional background was that in 2006 to 2010, we had a hybrid operation, so it was operated by enforcement staff, and then we had a vendor, which was Megatech at the time. Then in 2010 to 2017, it was a full turnkey operation with the Global Traffic Group, doing all operations, so there was no involvement really from the city at all in that program. Then in 2018, we went back to a hybrid operation until 2019 with Breckford Traffic Safety Group, again, having enforcement staff operate the program, day-to-day stuff, and then just having the vendor kind of processing the tickets. And then in 2019 to present, we're still operating a hybrid model with enforcement staff operating it and a vendor with Redflex as our current vendor. So, again, yeah, so the program overview, again, mobile. So for the mobile side of stuff, yeah, we operate mainly out throughout locations of the community. It's mainly playground zones. So that's therefore we operate from 7:30 to 9 p.m. Based on those hours. We look for 30 hours per officer per month for an annual deployment hours of 1,080. As far as our intersection devices, we have 3 in the city of Wetaskiwin. They enforce both speed on green and red lights, and then they're selected by intersections prior to my involvement, but based on high collision areas, and they operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then we're mandated to perform monthly inspections by enforcement staff and Redflex staff. So just some stats, again, for automated, so just get next slide. So, can we go back one? We're missing one. Should be one there. Keep going. Oh, it's missing. All right, I'll just read it off here. So basically, over the years, from 2017 to 2022, total tickets issued were ranging from 1166 to 2022, we issued 2,975 tickets. For the 2020 to 2022, we added the intersection devices, so that was a huge spike in tickets. With speed on green tickets being issued were 2,148. Red light tickets were 506, and then our mobile deployments had 321 tickets. All right, so now onto this one here. So obviously as tickets increase, we've kind of been seeing a trend, and then the collision stats were graciously provided by the RCMP to show that tickets are going up, but so is our collisions, so it's not really having the effect that it was anticipated to have, that we would reduce our collisions. So I'll go on to the next slide. So there's the volume one. So keep going. There we go. So the next 3 slides are going to kind of go over the revenue, expenses, and then the total operations for cost. So just be aware, as I explained, so from your 2010 to about 2017, that was all operated by Global, so there's going to be some high expenses in there for operations. And then from 2017 to 2019 was that when we moved in-house with Breckford, and then from 19 to 2022 and 2023 it's now in-house again with Red Flex. So here you can see some high revenue over the next, or I guess, 13 years I have here. And if we go to the next slide, which will be the expenses, again, shows that 2010 to 2016, again, high expenses, but that's because it's all operated as a turnkey solution, so that's a lot of administrative costs. Then in 2017, we took over to 2023, so we kind of reduced some of those expenses, but we still have some administrative expenses and staffing expenses. Then on to the next slide for your net total. This is where it kind of shows, we had some high revenue, but based on high administrative costs from 2010 to 17, really didn't net some totals, but just showing you that net. And then when we took over in 2018, we had obviously kind of running in the red until 2022 and 2023, we've kind of bumped back up into the black. So just to kind of give you the operations and the impact on enforcement services. So again, this is, like I said, I just brought this slide back for the tickets just to show you that, where our revenue and some of our total operation costs and also where our time is now being spent on violation tickets. So the next slide then too just shows some of the operational duties, administrative duties. So the upper green line, that's our deployments. So from 2017 to 2019, we kind of only had the mobile, so we actually had a lot of deployments. Then in 2020, we introduced the intersection devices, so some of our mobile deployments went down based on staff capacity, as well as we had also added the mobile devices. So the deployments are about 2 hours, is how much time is spent on average per mobile deployment. And then for where we talk about the validation checks, so that's that second green line, it's about 3 to 4 hours of time spent per deployment for those monthly. And then our blue line, we just show that when we're dealing with technical issues, that could be anywhere from 30 minutes to hours if we're on the phone trying to get that solution sorted out. And that's all I have for now, so any questions after?
Councillor Nielsen.
I move the City Council receives the Enforcement Services Operations Report dated September 25, 2023 as information. I do have some questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Trent, if we go to, well, I guess the first slide, it's program and service delivery. Let me back up here. Sorry, emerging concerns. Can you help me connect the dots? Delayed response time to community concerns and requests, increased complaints related to public behaviors and social disorders, and decreased proactive patrols. So is it safe for me to make an assumption that as we have received, or as you have received, increased complaints related to public behaviors and social disorder, that results in delayed responses to community concerns and decreased proactive patrols? Like, what is the correlation in this particular piece of the document?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So yeah, basically they're all intertwined. So a higher call volume, we're stacking calls. So like right now, any given time there could be one officer. Depending on the time, there could be 0 officers. So those calls are getting stacked. So the next officer that comes in now has to go through all those stacked calls. But then if they get another call, which we will deem a priority call, depending on what it is, public behavior, or some other stuff for us, which is in our matrix, they'll leave those calls and go deal with that call. And those calls now are still stacked. So then if they get time in the day, they'll go back to the stacked calls. Therefore, there's no time in the day to do any proactive work because they're just going from call to call to call to call.
So that would partly explain some of our community's frustration with we've made a request and the comment, no response. And their call's stacked in there. And
it's stacked in there somewhere, yeah.
Okay. And do your officers administer naloxone?
They carry it with them, but we haven't to date had to do that. So
You haven't?
usually, as if it's a co-response, fire is usually right behind us, if not there before us.
And when you talk about increased complaints related to public behavior and social disorder, what would the predominant issues be?
Right now, it's going to be our public intoxication, suspicious persons, suspicious vehicles, and then encampments.
And encampments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Blatz.
Through the chair to Trent. I am like, so I was looking at that chart that you had for the automated traffic enforcement, and you don't have 2023 numbers, which is okay, but just seeing for the last 2 years, like how much time that's taken up for officers. Would you say that that number has gone down at all in this year for how much time it's taking for officers to weed through the automated tickets? Or do you think that it's kind of holding the line between the 66 to 77% of your time?
The higher the tickets, the more involvement we'll have. So like I don't have those numbers with you, but there's court time, there, court prep time. Then I review all the, like if it's court, I review all of that. So, and then Heather, for instance, she also tracks all the payments. Because we are a hybrid operation, we have to track all our payments separately because they come to us, and then she has to communicate that to the vendor too for some of our agreements. So, yeah, so the higher the ticket volume, the more that will be. So,
It's pretty safe to say then that if we didn't have automated traffic enforcement, that you would have more time to do other things in the community?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a change in the volume of traffic? I've noticed the number of tickets have gone up, but so has the number of traffic collisions. Are we seeing more volume through those intersections, or is it?
So that is a great question to the chair. So they are supposed to report on that. We actually found a glitch that our vendor isn't providing what the total stats are. So we've corrected that. So obviously we'll start getting that kind of stat. But I also see that there is probably some trends. But also from my experiences doing traffic enforcement, it's just, there's not enough of us out there doing actual traffic. So therefore the cameras are going to pick up a lot. So.
Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thanks for your time, Sergeant. We are going to take a 10-minute break. 2-minute warning. Sorry? Yeah, 2-minute warning I just gave, so we'll be reconvening right away. 2. All right, welcome back. 9.3, we're getting into 2024 budget process, outside agencies, presentation to council. And we will start with Carly.
So anyone need paper copies before I sit down? You guys got it? Okay.
You know, Carly, can I steal one?
Yes.
2, maybe 3.
Do you guys want some too? Okay, here's one.
Pretty soon I'll need those.
I know, I just want all of us to.
Your eyes are better than mine. Won't open it. You bet. Couple times.
Okay, so I'm here to present today on our 2024 budget. I just wanted to start with a little bit of background and some highlights from 2023. So next slide, please. And for those who aren't aware, FCSS provincial program is an 80-20 split. So it's an agreement between the provincial government and the municipality. Provincial government provides 80% of our annual budget, and the municipality also chimes in their 20%. We've had some changes. I'm still kind of new to the game, but since I've come on, we've had a new accountability framework right, from provincial government. This is to address the mandate creep, ensuring that we're staying within our mandate of prevention-based social services and programs. So they have come up with 5 priority key social issues. I'm listing them here. So these are being homelessness and housing insecurity, mental health and addictions, employment, family and sexual violence across the lifespan, and aging well in community. So these are the areas that we are mandated to address, again, from a prevention-based standpoint, which does limit some of the services and programs that we are able to offer in community, but being aware that these are prevalent issues that come up for you guys on a very regular basis. The other thing I just wanted to address is I know prevention can be a loose term. We
Carly, can you just check your mic, please? Make sure it's on.
That would help, wouldn't it?
There we go.
See, but I have a loud mom voice, so I tricked you there for a while. Okay, let me restart. Definition of prevention: proactive process that strengthens the protective factors of individuals, families, and communities to promote well-being, reduce vulnerabilities, enhance quality of life, and empowers them to meet challenges of life. So this is the definition that my agency works within to address the key social issues that we discussed previously. All right, so let's move on to our program and event highlights from 2023. We've been busy, and obviously it's not over yet, but I wanted to highlight a few of the programs and services that we are most excited about from this past year. First one up is Cut It Out. So this is a program that we were so grateful for the collaboration of Camrose Women's Shelter Society and local RCMP, in particular their domestic violence member, in amending some information that we were generous enough to get from a project out of Western University. This was originally a program designed to support salon workers in addressing red flags of domestic violence, and then rerouting them to appropriate resources in the local community. So we took that program, we made it local to Alberta and Central Alberta specific resources, and then broadened it so that we are able to provide it to anyone in the community, because we feel anyone that deals with humans, which is most of us, can benefit from this awareness and the skills that are provided. So it is a 3.5-hour workshop that was provided in community, facilitated by local RCMP and a Camrose Women's Shelter outreach worker. So we intend to continue with this throughout the rest of 2023 and hopefully through 2024 as well. All right, next slide, please. One of our biggest investments for 2023 was our summer block parties. This was a great success, especially in the early phase of the summer. So we kicked this off in June and just wrapped it up a few weeks ago at the end of August. The focus here was community engagement, and hopefully to foster some volunteer engagement. As Councillor Elliott mentioned, volunteerism is definitely a challenge, and for a lot of us agencies, we rely heavily on volunteer support. So this is a crucial issue in our community. So what we did is we had a kickoff in Jubilee Park, which was very well attended in June. I believe we had over 200 people attend the first one, and then scattered them throughout local parks in the community, hoping to engage community members that may have transportation issues to get to Jubilee Park, where a lot of community engagement does happen, bringing it to their local community and allowing them to meet their neighbors and build some natural support networks. We were also really the other benefit of this is we were doing some community consultation for community safety well-being and our social needs assessment. So we were able to partner that engagement with these events, which proved to be quite successful. We had wonderful community feedback on these events and look forward to doing some more. All right, next slide, please. So one of our key metrics for our mandate is also community awareness. So education and awareness in community is one of the things that the provincial government would like us to focus on. So this is just a quick recap of some of the awareness initiatives that we have undertaken this past year. Some of them a little bit bigger than others, and very fortunate to partner with a lot of other local agencies and organizations on doing this work in community. I think this is probably one of my team's favorite things to do. It's always nice to be out in community, engaging dialogue, working with our community partners. So we very much enjoyed this and look forward to hopefully doing a bigger and better job in 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, so two of our biggest initiatives in 2023 have been community safety well-being and our social needs assessment. So community safety well-being is a city endeavor that was partnered with the RCMP, and we were lucky enough to be engaged fairly early on. So I've had the privilege of sitting on the steering committee for the past year for this project. I've learned a lot. We've been able to engage with the community and work towards gathering relevant data and coming up with some recommendations that will address the local needs that are being demonstrated through a quite extensive community consultation process that we have undertaken this year. Our social needs assessment was also approved by my board at the end of last year. So we were able to push these two projects together, couple our community engagement to prevent consultation fatigue in the community, and ensure that we had the best possible data to base these recommendations on. We are looking forward to the recommendations for both of these projects that are anticipated end of 2023, early 2024, and it will guide a lot of our projects and programs in 2024 and beyond, seeing what those recommendations come out as. Okay, next slide, please. So another thing that we are known for is community events. So this is just highlighting 3 of our bigger ones in the last year. We had a grief and loss seminar in the spring, which saw approximately 100 people attend and spend a day talking about grief and learning some tools and strategies to be able to better manage and cope, acknowledging that resources in grief are somewhat limited in our community. We also did our Canada Day Carnival, which we got to partner with a number of other agencies and put on a community-wide event that was, I think, very well attended and very well received. And our Overdose Awareness Day Vigil at the end of August that we held, not quite as well attended as last year. We had some weather hiccups, but definitely very, very beneficial and addressing a very pertinent need in the community and was well recognized by media as well. There's been a number of others. We've had barbecues. We've got to partner with the RCMP for community safety well-being. Again, very well attended. The helicopter didn't hurt, so thank you, John. Our screenagers screenings, the blanket exercises that we've hosted. We just did Love Bomb with the comp, as well as various holidays such as Halloween, trying to engage the community and create that sense of belonging for families and community members. Okay, next slide. So upcoming in November, we have Family Domestic Violence Prevention Month. Cut It Out will be a part of this. We are still finalizing details, so I don't have any information that's on here to kind of let you know what's coming, but there is something coming, so stay tuned and we will fill you in. Next slide, please. We also provide funding to outside agencies to do important work in our community. I have a small team and we acknowledge that we can't do all of the magical things that need to be done. So we are super grateful to be able to fund other agencies to do prevention-based work in the community. So this slide just encapsulates who we have funded in 2023 to do work in our community for various demographics that they specialize in. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to speak really quickly, this is not included in our normal FCSS budget. We were able to secure some additional funding to do our community resource navigation. I think this is a really important piece that we're able to offer in the community, address a little bit more intervention side of things. There are lots of needs, there are lots of resources, but sometimes it's not clear where you need to go when. So we've been really grateful for the opportunity to provide that one-on-one service to assist people in identifying what their needs are, the appropriate resources, and ensuring that applications and referrals are successful to them. Okay, next slide. So we're gonna move on to 2024. I believe in your package you should have a more detailed budget. It's a lot of lines. I didn't put it all on this slide. So the next slide just has the category subtotals. It is very similar to last year's budget. I think the biggest change is our contracted program delivery. So we did have a small increase from provincial government, which we are super grateful that the city was willing to match to give us a few more dollars to provide community services. And we are looking forward to bringing in some outside agencies to facilitate some groups and some programs that we don't currently have in Wetaskiwin. We'll be working out of our office and bringing in individuals who facilitate this in other communities. Like I say, the totals are on there. If there's questions, feel free to ask, but I'm not going to bore everyone with the details on those. Next slide. We are going to be bringing out a tenant education and financial literacy program. So in our past year's work with the community, trying to address homelessness from a prevention-based standpoint can be challenging, but we are identifying that there are some needs in people being aware of their rights and responsibilities as tenants as we are housing them. So we are working on a program to better educate them and support them in making proper decisions and being aware of what needs to happen in order to be successfully housed, as well as financial literacy. So as we've been successful hooking people up with financial supports and getting them on some income assistance, now we need to give them the tools to be able to manage it more effectively and ensure that their bills are being paid, that they're able to afford food, and that they're aware that there are a lot of costs and what that might look like so they can make appropriate decisions with their money. So that is two things that we are looking forward to bringing out in the coming months. Next slide, please. So in addressing mental health and addictions from a prevention standpoint, we have started this in 2023 and hope to continue through 2024 in providing subsidized training to community members. We have pushed this more heavily to service providers in the beginning, as they're usually a little easier to sell on training like this, but I do believe this benefits any community member that is willing to acquire these skills and use them. So mental health first aid and Safe Talk will be subsidized in community. Mental health first aid is really just what it sounds. It's those first frontline skills to identify possible crisis situations or needs and attach them to appropriate resources. Safe Talk addresses suicide specifically. So again, identifying risk factors and attaching them to local supports if needed. Okay. And then as I spoke to earlier, we do have some budget that I'm kind of waiting to put a hard line on, acknowledging that we will have some outcomes from our community safety, well-being, and social needs assessments. We have some brilliant people who are doing a lot of work in the background to help us identify the specific needs, and then I'll be working with my board to also prioritize what our agency would like to focus on. We're not going to fix all of the problems, so we're going to have to pick what we choose to prioritize, especially in the coming year or two. So there will be more detailed information once those recommendations are released. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Does anyone have questions?
Councillor Aberle.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Do I need to make a motion for each of the little ones, or can I just start asking questions?
You just move to accept it as information.
Okay. I move to accept the 2024 budget process FCSS as information.
Moved by Councillor Aberle. Go ahead.
I don't actually have questions, I have comments.
Okay.
But they're good comments, I promise.
All right.
I want to thank FCSS both as a citizen of Wetaskiwin, but as well as somebody who runs a local organization, for the work you do for all of us and in supporting us. You talked about your community events, and I try to go to as many as I can, and they really do help bring our community together, and I think that that helps give all of us a feeling of we can do this as a group. Little things that you've done that you didn't mention that are important is it is regular that community groups get your love bombs in a different way, where we'll get a candy or a thank you or whatever, because sometimes it is challenging, and we really appreciate that. And then last but not least, the interagency meetings, and I know I haven't personally been to them in a while, but they're invaluable for us to get together as a group of people who serve in the ways that we serve, to just know each other and understand each other's problems and successes. So thank you very much to FCSS for your good work.
Thank you, Councillor Aberle. I appreciate that, and I will give credit. I have an amazing team. This is not a one-woman show, so kudos to my team, and they are phenomenal.
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Through the chair to Carly. I publicly want to thank you and your staff for making FCSS a very important part of our community. It certainly have noticed a big difference in the last couple of years of how involved your organization has been in filling the gaps that are needed in our community. So no question other than a comment of thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Councillor Elliott, and we'll just make sure that we're speaking to our mics, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Cardi, and I was going to do the same as Councillor Billingsley. First of all, thank you for all the community engagement that you've done. Community safety and well-being, you've taken a leadership role in that, and I really appreciate that as well. Further to Councillor Aberle, at the last interagency meeting, there were 35 agencies there, and it was a very good meeting. So thank you for organizing that. And what you do with 3 staff members is really quite amazing, and I really hope you don't get burned out because you provide a great service to us. I have a question. Just could you share with council about Cindy Plant said you have an ID program that you're starting, or you have just started for people. Can you just share what that is, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is brand new, and I didn't have time to put it in the presentation, but we were approved last week to be part of the AHS ID program, which will allow us to liaise to a provincial program. Long story short, we can get individuals access to a 1-year government-issued photo ID for free, as well as an Alberta healthcare card. So this is going to be a game changer. I see some nodding heads. ID has been an issue for a really, really long time, and we've been aware of that. So we are able to assist individuals at our office. It is a bit of a lengthy application process, and there is a wait to get them, so they're not going to walk out with their ID, but ID is a barrier for so many social assistance programs, and we recognize that. So if people are looking for ID, there is an income threshold. Don't quote me. I want to say it's $36,000 for an individual. If you guys have questions, like, just reach out. I can pull all of that, all those numbers at the office and ensure that we are answering them accurately. But yes, we do have access to it anytime our office is open. So if someone's looking for ID, please refer them over and we'll help them out.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thanks, Carly.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Next up, we'll have Inspector Spans, please.
Your mic. Mike?
I told you I turned it off and you have to turn it on. That's what I just told you.
How's that? Okay. This will be a lot more brief than the last few meetings we've had. So what I was hoping to do today is just discuss our budget moving forward for the next fiscal year. And I'll cut straight to the chase. We're not asking for any more additional funds for members in the coming year. And there's a few reasons around that, but I'll give a brief rundown of what we have so far at our detachment. So currently we're staffed with 31 municipal police officers, and that ranges from the inspector position down through our constable ranks, and they're spread around our general duty positions down into our GIS and our crew positions. Right now, our complement of municipal police officers, so the municipally funded police officers, runs at about 406 citizens per police officer, which is I got to do my math here. The average is about 800 citizens per police officer. So our ratio is pretty high compared to other municipalities of the same size. Now, that being said, our criminal code per police officer, per municipal police officer, as of June of this year, when the report was prepared, was about 136 criminal code investigations per municipal police officer. The provincial average is 86. So we have to start talking about our burnout and our capacity to complete quality investigations, because that's incredibly important when you start talking about file load for our members. So why am I not asking for any more bodies this year? What we've been doing since I came into the seat at the detachment is try to efficiently use the resources we have. And that means adjusting our shift schedules, focusing on our hot spots, finding our hot times of day to deploy our members. So rather than overloading and overburdening our members at times when police aren't required, we're using them when our call volumes are higher. And we're starting to see some benefits financially from that, where our overtime is on par or less than last year when faced with generally the same challenges. So I want to make sure before we start asking for more bodies to make sure we're using the bodies we have efficiently. Another piece to this too is we still have the 4 grant-funded positions that are going to be discussed, I believe, in the coming days and weeks with council and the province. I didn't want to start asking for more bodies before we determine where we are with those grant-funded positions and whether or not those will be funded by the province or if that'll fall back to the municipality. For context and awareness, the cost for an additional police officer to the city with the, and this is only 70% of the total cost is what the city pays, is about $163,000 per officer. So I don't go into asking for more officers lightly, considering the financial strain it could have on a community, most certainly. This being said, we do operate under a post system in Wetaskiwin. So you may be aware, we police Wetaskiwin City, Wetaskiwin County, as well as the Camrose detachment area for rural Camrose County. And because we operate under a post system, we might have Wetaskiwin City members going out to Camrose and vice versa. Our Camrose members could come into town. And quite often that's where the resources are coming. Many more resources are coming in than going out. Now this is important because there is a need to bolster on the provincial side our provincial resources, specifically in the Camrose detachment area. I have recently submitted a business case to up that complement to a sergeant position with an additional constable to provide more rural support, which in turn will benefit the city. The point of the business case itself was to provide a higher level of supervision out in the rural parts with the sergeant, but the constable I've asked for is a community policing constable so that we can offer more proactive services to our rural component as well as our city component. Right now we have 2 CPVS, community policing crime prevention positions, and they are working to the max with the schools and various agencies, community engagement, that sort of thing. So a third to help with the rural component will benefit the city in that it'll free up our city resources. So like I said, I'm not asking for any more money. So a bit of a simple or quick presentation this morning, but certainly open to any questions council may have.
Councillor Elliott.
I would move that we accept the RCMP budget presentation as information.
Moved by Councillor Elliott. Go.
Could I through to the superintendent, in last month's presentation, I wasn't here, but when I was reading through it, in one of the graphs you said it was 1% was spent on drug enforcement. There was a graph there itemizing all these different things. Is that all the time that our members spend on drug enforcement? Earlier, one of the public speakers suggested that there are drug houses in Wetaskiwin that are unknown to us, and I'm wondering about enforcement of all of that.
Yeah, most certainly. Thank you. So that graph, 1%, it's a little deceiving.
Okay.
So 1% would be if drugs was the primary investigation being looked after. But quite often with drugs, you'll have stolen property, firearms, stolen vehicles, aggravated assaults, that sort of thing.
Yes.
So that graph is derived from the primary call to service, the primary investigation. And quite often drugs aren't the primary investigation. They're a part of it, most certainly, and certainly prevalent throughout many of our investigations, but not the primary cause. So for example, a few weeks ago we did a search warrant for guns, and with that came a lot of drugs. So often it's secondary to the primary investigation, which no tips of the trade being shared, I guess, but often a quicker way into a house is for stuff like property, knowing you're going to find drugs.
Okay. So you are aware of the drug houses, and then it's just a timing factor?
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay. And I would just like to offer my condolences to you and the members on your loss on the weekend.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? Councillor Nielsen.
You and I attended the Make Our Cities Safe conference.
Make sure you're into your mic, please.
Sorry. We both attended the safety of our city's conference in Edmonton and heard from large enforcement communities and the trials and tribulations they're facing, and how so many of them are employing mental health workers, crisis response, social workers, that kind of thing on their police departments. Because as they were stating, police officers are trained in enforcement. They're not trained for a lot of the issues you face in terms of social disorder. And so I guess my question, John, would be Inspector, would be to get your perspective on, I guess, the tolls or frustrations your officers might be facing in dealing with social disorder when perhaps they don't have a lot of specialized training in that area.
Yeah, most certainly, and you hit the nail on the head. It's what I took away from the conference is that it's a shared approach with crime reduction, social disorder. It's not just a police response, but it's a community response. And that's a message that I've brought forward to our detachment since I got here, but specifically since attending the conference. Are the members frustrated? I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I would say they are frustrated, but they know what's in their control. They know they're not mental health workers, addictions workers. Perhaps they wish they were or had the tools, but that's why we rely on our friends at, the Hope Mission, the FCSS, Boys Girls Club, et cetera, to help with that. But I know everybody's tapped resource-wise, most certainly. We don't have the luxury of being Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yes, indeed.
With the infinite resources, certainly.
And then in relation to some of the comments we received this morning, but also in your open house was a lot of frustration on the part of residents in terms of phoning in and maybe not getting the timeliness of a response that they were hoping for. How do you respond to that?
So actually, I heard that loud and clear, definitely from the open house, from the town hall, and then subsequent from that, we had the roundtable discussion last week through the CSWB. So, like I said at the town hall, the information I was given from our telecoms people is different than what we're hearing from the community. So I've sought to get different answers on that. I've run that up to K-Division headquarters to see why citizens are saying it's an hour wait, but telecoms is saying it's a 5-minute wait. So I don't exactly have an answer on that right now.
No,
Yeah.
and that's fine. And I guess my last comment would be, and I think it's something, and we've discussed it around the table ourselves, but the reporting is that your office or other police offices are only getting a tip of the iceberg in terms of calls for concern in the community. So people are seeing things, not letting you know. And I guess my question to you, mostly for the purposes of people here as well as maybe people watching, is why should people be calling you if they think, well, by the time you do arrive, whatever's happening would be long gone? Why is it important for you to get that call anyway?
So this circles right back to the resourcing piece and using our resources efficiently and effectively. We need to know when the calls are taking place and where they're taking place so we can allocate our resources to those places at certain times of day. I've received some feedback most recently because we kind of changed our scheduling a little bit where we're deploying our resources, where I can think of one in particular. The individual called saying he saw somebody carrying 2 catalytic converters down one of the trails and called, and then within 2 minutes the police were there because we had members in the area because we knew that was a hotspot. So that's why it's important for the citizens and everyone in Wetaskiwin to call so we can have members in the right places at the right time. Information is power, and we need to know when and where these occurrences are taking place. Importantly as well, and I'll share with council administration, beginning in the next few weeks, we're striking a task force internally with the help of partner agencies as well as our headquarters, CSWB, strike force for social disorder to really put our visibility on steroids in our hottest of hotspots. So over the next few weeks, you'll see a bit of an increase, and we'll see if that has any direct impact, certainly. And that's where the calls will be very, very important.
Great. Thank you, John.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I just have one other question. I sound like Councillor Bronco, just one more question. Are your members dealing with overdoses as well and assisting people who are overdosed?
Yes, they are. I don't have exact numbers. I can say anecdotally, it's maybe not every day, but every other day, dealing with some form of an overdose. Our members are now very well trained and well versed in dealing with somebody that's overdosing. So we do rely on our partners at AHS quite often to help. That being said, administering naloxone and Narcan isn't as unusual as it used to be.
Okay.
And that's not just Wetaskiwin, that is across the board, everywhere.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have any idea of a budget impact for 2024 with body-worn cameras or contract negotiations or any additional equipment?
Yes, so with the contract negotiations, there's nothing set in stone yet, but what our operational strategy branch has, I guess, cautioned or projected is to have municipalities plan for about a 3.5% increase to police salaries. That could be lower, it could be higher, but that's kind of the agreed upon percentage. In terms of body-worn cameras, I just got an update this weekend speaking with somebody who was piloting it. The update is there is no update. They piloted a certain camera and it failed miserably, so they've gone back to square one. So I don't, if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't see us having body-worn cameras in this coming fiscal year.
Okay. Any other equipment?
Taser 7s are rolling out. We haven't received our shipment yet. That's our new tasers. About 12 of our members will be outfitted with them, but I believe they're already paid for. I don't believe they're in the next budget. I have to confirm that.
Okay,
Yep.
Great, thanks. Anything further? Ready for the question, those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thanks, Inspector. Next up, Wetaskiwin Public Library.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The Wetaskiwin Public Library is currently undergoing a transition with their management staff, and as a result have requested an extension from administration to get their 2024 budget information to us. The Council can expect that they'll be in front of you folks on October 23rd. I believe that's the second meeting in October to present that information.
Okay, thank you. 9.4, 2024 draft budget presentation. And it was sent in as an addendum, so it'll be in a different link.
Hi. Yes, I'm here to present the 2024 draft budget. So all council and the mayor should have a package for the 2024 budget. I'm just going to go over some of the highlight here, and then in our October meeting, we're probably going to go into more of the specifics. So the RFD purpose is to inform council of the 2024 budget position prior to October 16th, 18th. The draft operating budget is showing a need for $664,790, which is equivalent to 3.66% increase in tax rate. Major sources of change on the revenue side are sales and user charges, which increased because of the increase in fees and charges bylaw, which was approved in 2023. Taxation and grant in place. In 2023, we did not include the requisition amount, so that has been updated now in the 2024 budget, which is why you see a change of $4,472,900 on the revenue side, but then also $4,261,640 on the transfer to external party side. So basically, requisition is we're collecting on behalf of other people and it's in and out. Grants and transfers were showing a decrease of $452,020. That's because project-specific grant revenue is expected to be fully used in 2023, which is why the grant side of it is decreased, but so is the cost side of it. Penalty and fines have been showing a decrease of $38,500. and that's mostly coming from provincial fines revenue, which is showing decrease. Other revenue is showing an increase of $389,790, which is from our investment with securities held at CIBC, which is to adjust it more closely to our 2023 amount as well. And also PCEL utility administration fees, we're forecasting it to be closer to 1 million instead of 809,000. So altogether, significant changes from revenue is about 4,465,190. But again, a big portion of that is requisitions, so which you'll see again on the expense side. As for expense, we are showing a decrease in salary and benefit of 1,343,950. And that's from undergoing a lot of restructuring, including custodian staff, janitorial staff, RCMP contract. So that's why salary and benefits is showing much lower. But then on the offsetting side, we are increasing contract and general services by 1,785,170. And again, that's because a lot of the waste collection, janitorial, and other fees have moved from salaries to contract services. Also, insurance fees have increased by 140K to closely reflect the amount that EB Muni have actually quoted us. And in 2023, we had to come to council for in-year council motion to increase it. So this year, we're just going to ask as part of the base. Material good and utilities show a slight decrease of about 20K. And then transfer external parties, that's mostly from just requisition, we're including it now. Bank fees and charges is showing a decrease about 37,380. You also see that the principal on long-term debt has gone down by about 99,000, and that just because as the city continues to pay down its debt, we'll have less in principal and in interest payment. Provisions for our taxes has gone down slightly. Internal allocations is showing an increase of 155,000, but that's just because we're correcting an error that happened in 2023 because equipment pool and facility are supposed to net to zero on a citywide basis, and it wasn't done that in 2023. We've corrected in 24, so that's what that is. Same thing with changing TCA. There was a slight error in 2023 where it had a 1,600 as showing as that, but now we just changed it. Transfer from to reserve is showing an increase of $757,570. Big part of that is because we are anything that's reserve funded in 2023, we're assuming that is going to be gone, so there's no transfer from reserve. And then transfer to reserve is increased to account for the increased interest from our securities, which is all going to be transferred to reserves. So if you add up the change from expenses and change from revenue, we're seeing the need for another 664,000. That's just for the base budget. And then on the operating business case side, we're asking, if everything is approved, we're asking for $1,606,630, of which $863,830 will be funded from increasing tax rate, which is equivalent to another 4.76%. And then the remaining part of it, $682,800, will be funded from a mixture of stabilization and contingency reserve, and then $60,000 of it is hopefully received from grants. And then on the capital side, we're asking for additional $4,878,608. And then there were some that were already approved, which is adding up to the 9 million. But the 3,554,000, which were already approved, we already have funding for, so we're not really asking for any more for that, but just more of a FYI. The amount that will be requested for new capital, we're expecting about 3 million of it to come from a mixture of MSI, which is now called the Local Government Fiscal Framework, starting in 2024. CCBF, which is from the Fed, and other grants. And then the 1,644,321 will be funded from a mixture of infrastructure, Manluk, information technology, and equipment pool. So there will be no impact on taxes. And that is all.
Councillor Billingsley. Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Billingsley. Is your mic on?
It is not, sorry. Through the chair, transfers from to reserves of that $757,570. Can you please explain further exactly what you're trying to say? And
Sure,
why?
yeah, absolutely. So basically, if you look at the other revenues, that is showing an increase of about 389,000. So that will be an additional transfer to reserve, because whatever we receive in interest, we're transferring to the reserve. So, and then the other portion of it is, in 2023, we have a couple of items that we expected to transfer from reserve to fund the 23 cost, and then we're assuming that all these will be done by the end of 23. So then transfer from reserve would have decreased, which is showing as a positive number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Further into our package, that wasn't discussed, if I go, and I guess my question would be to administration through the chair. There are some projects in here, one that stood out to me. Sorry, I'm just going to find it here. It was by the lake park, and am I wrong to say that the dredging is not forecast to be done until next year?
So we already have approval to spend 1.2 million this year, and then I believe we're asking for additional amount.
I can weigh in on this through the chair to Councillor Billingsley. We did commission a report this year, and during budget deliberations, administration will be recommending that we redirect those funds to other parts of the park. The costs have come in significantly higher, so when we do a project update, we will give council that information.
I'd like to follow that up. Last November, it was passed to do that, and we've been told throughout the year that this project would be going forward, and now this is the first that I've heard that it's over budget and that you're looking now not to do it. We're almost in October. What if we say, no, we're going to go ahead with it? We're out of time.
The reports to council have indicated that we've been waiting for a report from the engineering firm.
And when was this report, engineering report, provided?
We just received the report recently.
Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Along the same lines, through the chair, I guess, to yourself, on transfer to and from reserves, do we identify investment revenue going into specific reserves?
I believe that we have a policy that tells which specific reserve it's going to. It's going to selection of reserves in so far. I have to do a little bit more analysis.
For sure.
Yeah.
And could we be apprised as council what reserves, or remind us which policy to go to get that information, please?
Yes, absolutely. So if you go to in your big binder, if you go to the reference section, I did include the reserve policy, so it should state it in there.
That's good then.
Yeah.
Then the other question, I guess, and it's through the chair to administration, I guess. As we have moved staff off of our payroll and onto contracted positions with our other agencies, we're told that those decisions always result in a positive financial position for us. And I see those contracted services going up while the decrease in salary and benefits goes down. So why would there be a different valuation there?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, I should have just stripped this RFD down to say what the tax increase was, because I think it's difficult to understand global comments from finance. The PowerPoint presentations from each division will be sent to council this week, and they have all of the details. And so there were cost savings with those decisions that were made. The fact that contracted services went up, well, they went up in completely different areas. So they'll all be explained as when the PowerPoint presentations get sent to council.
Okay, thank you. And my last comment is in relation to the Peace Hills Utilities admin fees, and projected to be closer to $1 million than the $809,000. Will that be broken out for us so we can see, like, to me, just as that line sits there, the admin fees of $1 million against Peace Hills Utility seems exorbitant, seems high. And I'd like to understand what Peace Hills Utilities is paying that money for. And I'm not looking for an answer today, but I think it's critically important when we start seeing down to budget, talking about what services Peace Hills is paying for, that the city is providing to operate that service. So because I don't understand it at this point for the dollar value to be as high as it is.
I do want to address that so that there is not misinformation floating around in the public. So the admin fee is closer to $500,000, and that spreadsheet was provided to council last year during budget. We can send it to you again. The ROI is the one that is, the return on investment is the $1 million. So the return on investment over the past 5 years has fluctuated up and down. I did have a discussion with finance stating that if Peace Hills Utilities is not okay with the ROI, then there's a bigger discussion because obviously that would impact the tax base. And so what we've done is take the average. I don't know why it changed last year, but we've taken the average over the last several years and landed on $1 million. That obviously is still a discussion that the board has to have.
And then, Sue, where does that $1 million go? Sorry, the return on investment, it comes back to us. Where is that directed? Is it directed into general revenues? Is it directed into reserves? Where does it go?
It directly offsets tax increase, so it's into general revenues.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Botts.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, I think I'm still stuck on the Vital Lake Park rehabilitation part, and it's mainly because in the beginning parts it says that it's a project with previously approved funding for the Vital Lake Park rehabilitation pond dredge. And then it says it's being carried forward to 2024, and then it shows up again in the Vital Lake Park rehabilitation with the fence replacement, dredge, and park furniture, so it shows up a second time, this time with different funding, and then carried forward to 2024. And then it says the new request for 2024 for the pond dredge would be to come from the infrastructure tax reserve. I think I'm confused because there's so many different parts of the Vital Lake Park rehabilitation that I don't understand how the dredge shows up in two different parts, and then we're also asking for more money for the dredge through infrastructure tax reserve, even though it says it's being carried forward to 2024 previously. So I'm just trying to understand
I can explain
the circle of that.
I through the mayor to councillor. So the first part of it, the project with previously approved funding, that's the 1.2 that we already have the grant for.
Yep.
And then the 1.3 is the new amount that we are asking for. So in total, so that's how I kind of break it down. Like if the project gets canceled, both of that will be released. But as it stands right now, we only have the 1.2 and we need the 1.3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting it. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. I don't know if to administration or, so one point on regarding the dredging, so it's $1.2 million you budgeted. And you're saying now $1.3 million or another addition of 1.3?
Another addition of 1.3.
1.3?
Yeah.
How do you get your estimates at 1.2 then goes to 2.5? Well, how do we estimate when we go to budget? If I'm in the wrong place, please correct me. How do you get an estimate to go to budget 1.2 and now we're saying it's 2.3? Who does your estimating? How can we be so far off 100% on a budget? Something's wrong here. And I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
I thought so.
I'm done with the questions.
Okay. Anything further? Ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Sorry, I had to get out of the addendum. Item 9.5, Hope Mission presentation, and I just want to qualify that by, we have to take a break just before noon. I've got a meeting with Minister Dreeshen, so this might be a two-part presentation, if that's okay. Awesome, thank you.
Probably get the presentation done. We'll have a few questions after.
Okay. Just make sure the mic is on, please.
Well, good morning, Council and Mayor. We appreciate the chance to come and share information. I'm Kelly Rowe. I'm Community Engagement and Chaplain at the Hope Mission Shelter here in Wetaskiwin. I'm joined by Paul Brisebois, our Shelter Coordinator. He'll join me in the question and answer portion. And we also have Tim Pasma he's our Director of Homeless Programming, and he's stationed in Edmonton, so he'll be here if we need some questions answered from a higher level. But I'm pretty sure Paul and I can handle most of the local questions. So, first of all, Hope Mission, for people that don't know, we've been operating since 1929, so we've been helping people in homelessness and situations of vulnerability for over 90 years. It started out in Edmonton. We can go to the next slide. We started out in Edmonton. That's a picture up on the top of our first shelter. Our first soup kitchen, and the bottom is a picture of our first shelter. Hope Mission was born out of the Great Depression. Just a great need came to the city of Edmonton. There was no services like this in existence. First it started with the soup kitchen because of people living on the street that had no money and no food. So one church tried to intervene. They eventually needed partners. 5 churches got together and opened a soup kitchen. And from that, we realized not too long thereafter that a shelter was necessary as winter approached to be able to provide people with shelter and food. And that was kind of the beginning. It was a short-term vision, and they figured it'd be about a 5-year operation, and here we are 90 plus years later, operating in the same sort of fashion and coming to new towns and cities, such as Wetaskiwin, to offer advice or services or whatever's needed. So that was kind of the beginning. We also branched off into other services we'll get to, but we can go to the next slide. So we've existed as a part of a parachurch organization, you would call us, a social service agency, but we exist to serve, strengthen, uplift men, women, youth, and children. So there's a life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ. So we believe in physical needs are there, mental needs, health needs, but also spiritual needs as well. And we are on the ground in in Wetaskiwin here for 10 years doing our youth and children's programming, which kind of birthed out of a shelter that we opened up to provide for teens at Edmonton at one time, and it led us into helping youth and families experiencing poverty out in the neighborhoods of Edmonton. And we were the first branch outside of Edmonton was Wetaskiwin here to help with this service. And interestingly enough, this is our first shelter project or homeless project outside of Edmonton as well, who was here in Wetaskiwin. So that's kind of the history there. We can go to the next slide. So this is our emergency shelter. We're located just north of the Wetaskiwin at the end of 37A Avenue. This is a temporary facility located right next to the land that's been allotted to us for the future shelter build. It's a wide open basic room where we can provide food and tables and sitting area and places to play cards, different things like that, but also the emergency shelter bed. So it's all in one room. It's like a grab bag room. We've got a shower trailer to provide showers and different things and whatnot. So we can go to the next slide. So we have 60 shelter beds available now. We host between 30 to 60 people nightly. Numbers went up from the end of winter. We were averaging somewhere between 30 and 40 a night. For the summer, it was more around 50 to 60. Average night of 45 plus, but sometimes we were over that 60 number. So we were quite surprised to see the increase. We weren't too sure what to expect, as this being the first summer, there was an emergency shelter in Wetaskiwin, so we weren't too sure what to expect for numbers. We weren't too sure how many would be coming. We thought the number would drop. But we've seen these numbers stay high in Edmonton as well. So we're not too sure what to expect this winter, but we'll be ready for the room we have. We do have kind of an overflow area, so we can go over 60, but we're pretty tight if we get to around that 65 number. It's also a day warming center and washrooms, a place to get out of the rain in the summer as well. So it's a place of respite for that. So you don't have to be staying overnight to receive services at Hope Mission. We have a nurse on site 5 days a week. She sees roughly 8 to 12 people per day. We have a hot meal served at 5 p.m. Huckleberry's Restaurant was partnered with us to help provide some of that, but we've now moved on to Hope Mission is providing those meals from our Edmonton kitchen. Eventually in the future, that would be the idea of having a kitchen as well as the shelter and a dining area so we can provide and prepare the food on site and serve it in a separate area from the sleeping quarters. We serve bag lunches during the day. Water is available at any time. And roughly we serve around 2,000 meals in that area or over per month. We provide showers, blankets, towels, clothing, hygiene supplies. We added laundry services there as well, so clients can do laundry there, but we can also clean our own blankets and all the different things we have in the shelter. We also provide haircuts. I had a discussion about that this morning, so people on staff are providing some haircuts as well. We provide storage of some small personal items. We provide spiritual care and connections to other community supports. So that's the basic information, what's going on at the shelter day by day, but we also provide some other services outside of the shelter itself, so we can go to the next one. Why emergency shelters? This is just a basic rundown in 2013. Someone staying in a shelter bed is around $2,000 per month expenses, according to homelessness in Canada through the agencies there provided. If a person is spending a month in jail, the price goes up quite a bit. As far as hospital bed, you can see a significant increase again. So this is the reasoning behind homeless shelters is there needs to be somewhere for people to get basic care so you prevent them from ending up in jail or hospital for a long term. Or when they get out of hospital, there's someone there to take care of them as well. So a lot of the influx of people we see are people coming out of jail end up at the homeless shelters, and people coming out of hospital that don't have homes end up at our shelters as well. So we're trying to help in any way we can to divert the pressures off the healthcare and justice systems right towards more social care and provision that way. Next slide. So outside of just the 24/7 recovery, shelter, we have addiction recovery programs available in Hope Mission Edmonton called Breakout and Wellspring. And we can also refer to other agencies as well for recovery. We have a housing diversion program that's kind of up off the ground. We'll explain a bit more details. And we also offer the Hope Mission Rescue Van, which I'll give you more details on. But first of all, we'll go to the Breakout Recovery and Wellspring options. So Breakout and Wellspring are one-year programs. We have transported 22 men to start out in Breakout, and 4 women have been accepted in Wellspring. Currently, we have 6 men in Breakout and 1 residing in Wellspring. And we have referred some other people to other agencies as well. So out of that, that's just strictly the number of people that have gone to Breakout in Wellspring and Edmonton through Hope Mission. So, you know, the participants don't need to be homeless when they come to Breakout and Wellspring, but most of the participants are coming from our emergency shelters. So one of the avenues when I started on here was to be part of this opportunity to be able to get people to recovery. So that's one of my focuses within the shelter, is to get people that need addiction recovery to programming. And that's one of the things we face daily. We can have up to 70 participants in Breakout, 24 in Wellspring. So the reason we have way more men going up is the 70 beds are rarely full, so we have quite an easy access to get them in. I can meet a man and within 2 weeks, usually they can get into the program if they're serious, if they want to go. So it's a pretty open access, so it's very easy to get them in. Wellspring, we're currently, quite often full, so it's a wait list sort of situation. So we've had many women, express interest, but because of the wait list, sometimes if you have to get on a wait list, the interest can go up and down with the addiction and the state of their, well-being and that. So when they express interest, it makes it a lot easier in the situations with the men that we can get them situated somewhere and on the road to recovery. And after graduation, there's opportunity in Edmonton. There's transitional housing called Green Manor for people specifically coming out of our programs. And they can stay in continued care for up to 3 years. So it's not just the year of recovery. You could possibly be staying at Hope Mission for up to 4 years as part of your recovery. We currently have 27 staff members on payroll at Hope Mission that have come through these programs and currently work for us. Our shelter coordinator, Paul Brisebois, actually 9 years ago, his first experience, or 10 I think it is now, 10 years ago, he came through our Breakout program. And now he's our shelter coordinator here in Wetaskiwin, so he understands kind of the plight of what we're facing. Next, our Hope Mission Housing Diversion Program. Now this is something the new facility is going to be a lot more involved in, but because we don't have any units that we control, it's often very difficult to get people out of a shelter into a housing unit. So we're working right now with partnerships in town to try to come up with some providers, landlords that will accept some of our clients, and we'll work with them in their units. So it's to help homeless get not necessarily to recovery, but it's to a housing situation. We receive housing funding to help people with damage deposits and first month's rent. This is through our partnership called Homeward Trust in Edmonton, where we're part of the Housing First profile. We provide many people. I believe we have over 100 clients in housing in Edmonton, so it's something we want to help here with. So they provided us some of the funding, but we don't have partnerships like they have in Edmonton to have the units available. But it's something that we want to get rolling here in the new year, even here in the fall possibly, but we're currently just seeking out landlords that'll help and be part of the system. We'll apply, help the clients apply for financial assistance, and we'll follow up in support in the housing with our staff that have made connections with them to get them housed. We'll also follow up with support in the house. That's kind of the idea of the Housing First model, is to have connection with the people and then make home visits so they can have someone that can support them while they're being housed, because again, it's a lot of difficulties arise. Next slide. The rescue van. We started this program with just a more of a minivan in the fall. We've now obtained a vehicle that's more suited to it. A retired ambulance is what we run. We also run this program in Edmonton 24/7, so we can go to the next slide. So the rescue van is also going to be a 24/7 operation. It currently is, so if you want to make a call to Hope Mission. There's a number on the screen there. We'll try to respond. Currently, we don't have staff allocated directly to the van, but we are going to that model. This is something that has come about in the last couple weeks, that we are going to now have staff that are just on the van, so that van can be on the road. Currently, what we're doing now is it's staff leave the shelter staff to go to the van calls, and it pulls people from the shelter. So not always are we available if there's things going on at the shelter. We have people on breaks. Sometimes we're missing calls, but now this is the evolution of the program, is to have people assigned to that van 24/7, where that's their required job. They come in, they're on the van. When the calls come in, they go directly to the van. So there'll be more, we'll be able to respond in a better way than we have been. We've been doing quite well. I'll get into some of the stats, as we go on. But we're trying to divert calls away from the RCMP bylaw and the paramedics. Sometimes a lot of these calls, it's people known to the shelter or not, but they just need help to get back to the shelter or to a safer place. If they don't want to leave with us, then we can't force them, of course, into the van. It's the same thing in recovery. We can't force people to recovery. That's always a personal choice. So when we show up, if people don't want to leave, it's then the next stage would be call bylaw or RCMP. But we've received over 100 calls per month since we started. We've transported clients outside of those calls to other appointments, doctor's appointments, housing appointments, court cases, different things like that, so people can get to specific appointments that are important to their future. Really what we're trying to do is help people transition off the street. Yes, we're an emergency shelter. It's open every day and provides these things, but our desire is to see each person move forward and off the street, right? Not stay with us forever indefinitely. And we also provide the on-site support and connections to other community associations in town. If we can't meet the need and there's other agencies that can, we refer people outside there. Next slide. This is the outside view of the proposed facility. We can go to the next slide. This is the initial drawings. We just turned drawings into the city for the building permits that are going to be put in place. So this is our original drawings, but it's the same. Basically, some of the details within the walls have changed, but the size of the facility and everything's the same. Roughly, it'll be a shelter with a capacity of 60, but we'll be able to use bunk beds to go up to a maximum number of 120 if it's ever needed, but it's really a design for about 60 people on the floor. With some bunk beds, we can go beyond 60. And the dining hall will be capable to support 125 people. We plan on using this facility for some of our community meals within our youth and family programs. We have, other events we can run there, but again, the door will be open not just to people staying at the shelter, but it'll also be open to people in the community that need meal support. So we currently have people that come, and just eat, but they don't stay at the shelter. A lot of them are staying in encampments or housed rough, as they would say, but they're still eating at the shelter, so we will need space beyond the 60 beds kind of thing. And then the transitional housing wing is further over on our left. That's going to be the first floor with dormitory units. Right now, we're taking people directly out of the emergency shelter off to detox and then into program. This will be a way to transition people out of the shelter into a more, supported living. So when they go to recovery, they're more prepared, and we'll stick the programs out, and we get a chance to work with them and counsel them even before they go and sober them up. And if they're on a wait list, they don't have to wait in the emergency shelter. They can wait within the transitional dorms, which will make it easier to get them to programs in the future. So that is also, somewhere where somebody, let's say they come back from a hospital and they don't necessarily need to be in the shelter. We can provide them a little safer place, a more confined, private place. So it'll be a step up. So that's one of the areas of transitioning people out, will be use of those dormitories. And then the next slide will show just the seven bachelor suites that we will have. So this will be a way to transfer people out of the shelter, possibly into the dorms, into housing, within our confines, and work with them so they, can start taking on the struggles, the cleaning that's necessary, the budgeting that's necessary, the personal hygiene that's necessary, right? Whatever things that are necessary you know, to help alleviate the stress of paying bills and all these different things. So we can house them temporarily within our transitional housing facility. There again, if someone goes off to a recovery program in the future or is housed, ends up falling through, comes back, we have options where we don't have to put them directly back into the emergency shelter. We can have some options so we can keep them transitioned out of the emergency shelter and keep them focused on what worked and help them with what didn't and help them move forward in the future. So that's the vision for the building. We can answer questions on that after. We can go to the next slide. That's just a look at the dorm units, the difference between a typical dorm and the bachelor suite and whatnot. We can go to the next slide. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up the presentation portion. We're open to answering some questions. I'll just invite Paul up here in the chair if we have time.
Nope, we're gonna break for a minister's meeting and then we'll take questions after lunch.
Okay, wonderful.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget everything that was presented. I don't have to go through it again.
What's that?
Don't forget everything that was presented.
I
at the
won't,
lunch.
I've made notes.
Yeah, amen. All right, thank you so much.
Council will break for lunch until 1:15, please.